Tonight's shiur is called Countdown. Countdown to freedom, insights into the Sfirat HaOmer, into the counting of the Omer. We have a mitzvah from Pesach, the day after Pesach, until Shavuot, to count every single day. We count down. Today is one day of the, rather we count up. We don't count down. We count up 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And we get to a week, we say today is a week. And when we finish a week, we say this is the 15th day of the Omer, which is 1 week and 1 day. We count in weeks and days and weeks and days. Meaning to say that we don't just count days, we don't just count weeks. We count both days and both weeks. All in all, there are 49. And we'll soon investigate and see why 49 and what is this counting up towards the giving of the Torah all about. Ever since the creation of the world, and even more so after man sinned by eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad, and incorporating within his psyche, within his being, an evil inclination or an urge contrary to the will of God, an urge to do what I want, placing myself, my ego, my desires before the will of God. And even more so in times of exile, and specifically the times when the Jewish people were in Egypt, we are traversing through darkness. It is a challenge to go through this darkness, to go through the material world with all of its challenges. Let us go back to creation. In the very moment of creation, the very first moments of creation, the Torah says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. God created the heaven and earth. V'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al penei tehom. And the world was confounded, void, without any form and structure, and there was darkness of the face of the earth, on the face of the depth. Veruach Elokim merachefet al penei hamayim. And then there was a glimpse, a glimmer of hope, a glimpse of light. The Spirit of God is hovering over the face of the water. So at the very onset of creation, the very first thing is darkness. Although creation is a very great act of godliness, where if one only looks, one can see the hand of God in everything, but nonetheless, it is a very dramatic concealment of godliness. To such an extent and to such a degree that one can even err and think that there is no God, God forbid. There is no master to this birah, to this creation, to this edifice. And that we feel that we are independent existence. We don't feel that we are totally dependent upon God. We feel that we are independent. We need to struggle and toil within our minds to understand that we are truly null and void before the essence of all life, the source of all energy, which is God, and we are null and void before Him. But we have to work on ourselves. So really creation is a very deep concealment of godliness. And our objective is to traverse through this darkness, this concealment, and to make that glimpse of light that the Almighty from time to time reveals, make it real and make it a part of our lives. Make it such a reality that it is something that cannot be taken away from it, inseparable from us, an inseparable part of us. The darkness or the concealment became even more difficult. The challenge, the journey became even more difficult when the urges became from within and not from without. We know that until man sinned, the urges or the temptation was outside of him. In the case of the serpent, it was embodied in the serpent. When man ate from the tree of knowledge of good and bad and followed the urges or the temptation or the argument of the Nahash, which was the embodiment, the serpent, which was the embodiment of impurity, which is the embodiment of the evil inclination, that part that is necessary in this world to be able to facilitate free choice, that was an external part. All of a sudden, when man listened and followed to the advice of the evil inclination, then it became a part of his psyche, part of his world, part of his reality. And ever since that moment, there's a continual battle and friction between the part of us that wants to do the right thing, the part of us that wants and nullify itself and recognize God, and the part of us that wants to follow its own ego and, so to speak, place its own ego as a deity, as a god unto itself. This was exasperated when the Jewish people went into Egypt for 210 years, or rather from the moment that Yaakov and his children passed away, the Jewish people slowly began to emerge in a deeper and deeper and deeper spiritual exile and darkness, to the extent they were so sunken deep into impurity and the defiled lifestyle of the Egyptians that they sunk to 49 levels of impurity. And because of this, the Almighty, so to speak, sent his ray or flash of revelation and saved the Jewish people, to the extent that the Jewish people had to flee Egypt. Why did the Jewish people flee Egypt? Because they were so absorbed in the negativity and the impurity of the lifestyle and culture of Egypt that although, and we know this in our own lives, we know that sometimes when we're attached to a particular vice, to a particular addiction, and we know in our minds, and we've made up our minds to not do it again, and whatever the case may be it drinking, be it smoking, be it honor, and be it whatever it may be. But we're still attached to it. At the beginning stages, it's very hard until you become accustomed to weaning yourself off or dislodging yourself from this particular vice. You have to run away from it. You have to totally detach yourself from it and almost like run away. It's not like you can just like sort of walk through that temptation or walk through that, like if a person has a drinking problem, he can't just sit in a bar. I can't drink. I don't know how to drink. I'm not a drinker at all. I don't even like drinking even a little bit. So not only I don't have a drinking problem, but I don't even know how to drink at all. So for me to sit in with some people who are drinking, it's like it's repulsive for me. It has no attraction to me whatsoever. But someone who's weaning himself off, someone who has an addiction, he's got to run away from that. Even though he knows and he recognizes just as much as I know and recognize that drinking is no good or whatever other type of bad habit is no good, he's got to run away from it because he's still attached to it. The Jewish people were attached to Egypt, to the lifestyle of Egypt. It's not something that is removed so easily. And now suddenly there was a flash of spiritual lightning. God revealed himself to the Jewish people, and they saw the light, and they understood that this lifestyle and this culture is repulsive, is the antithesis of what their ancestors represent, and the exact opposite of their goals that they have to aspire to. But they didn't have the strength to do it on their own. So the Almighty revealed this flash, this ray of light. But the fact that the Almighty did it for us showed that we were spiritually immature to do it on our own. And because of that, we had to flee Egypt. We had to run away from Egypt. We couldn't even dream of going the shortcut because maybe we would come back to Egypt. Like someone who's addicted, he cannot go next to the bar, he cannot go next to the pub. Even though he knows, even though he's made a very conscious decision, I'm not going to do this again and never again, and he understands why and how damaging it is. And look, I've been gambling, and I've gambled away my life, and I've lost my house, and I'm endangering my marital life and the respect of my children. And he knows all of this. But soon as he walks by the casino, as soon as he walks by the pokies, danger. So what does he do? He must run away. For me, I can walk by, or any other person who has no connection to it whatsoever, can walk by 10 pokies and won't even see it. His mind will be on his mobile, his mind will be on this, his mind will be on 10 other things, but not on that at all. Doesn't even see it at all. He's got to run away because he has a very strong attachment to it. The Jewish, ki bara ha'am, it says, that Paro saw that the nation is fleeing, is running away. Why were they running away? What were they fleeing? They were fleeing because they had an addiction. They had the courage and the strength to leave because they saw the flash of God's light. At the time of revelation, the time of the Exodus, they saw God's light. But they had to run because they were spiritually immature. They had to detach themselves from the impurity of Egypt. So they had to run. This is what the Kabbalists called itaruta dele'ela. This was an arousal from above. There are two ways to have a connection to God. One is when God reveals himself to us and we are blinded by the light. All of the darkness just suddenly disappears. Everything becomes so clear. There are no doubts. But soon as that light goes away, we grope in the darkness. Yes, so the light suddenly was turned on for a flash for a moment, and so I know more or less that there's furniture in the room. And I know more or less that in the middle there's a path, and on the right there are seats, and on the left there are seats, in the middle is a teva about 5 meters, 10 meters down, and I've got to walk around. So I've got an idea. But now I'm on my own. And I've got to make my way through the darkness and succeed through the darkness. What has helped me is that flash of spiritual light that the Almighty revealed himself to me when I just didn't know. When I was just too much in the darkness that I had no idea. And if I were to walk, I wouldn't know whether to walk to my right or to my left. I'm just too much in the darkness. I would just fall and falter and bang into the seat. We see this. How often do we see this with people? They just have no idea. No idea about spirituality, no idea about nothing. But being that they have a soul, and when the Almighty flashes his flash of light from time to time, we see. But then we have to take that light, and we have to be able to make it ours. We have to own it. It has to belong to us. And we have to expand upon it. We have to build upon it. We have to live by it. And this is what the Kabbalists called itaruta deletata, arousal from below. Now, arousal from below, albeit is not like a light, a flash of lightning, a flash of lightning from God, a great revelation, miracle. The light is not as intense. The light is not as powerful. But the difference is it's enduring because it's yours. You've made it your own. Once I walk through and I found my way through the darkness, that's it, it's mine. I know exactly how to go. I know exactly how to navigate because I've done it before and I'll do it again. I no longer need that extra light, that extra assistance. So the Jewish people, they left Egypt. But they needed to run away from Egypt because they were like an addict, an addiction. They had an addiction to the impurity of Egypt. They were almost lost. They were on the 49th. The 50th level is the deepest level by which there is no return. So they were almost totally lost. So deep that they had to run away. The Jewish people went bihipazon, with a rush, with a mad rush. like a person running away from an addiction, running away from a fire, running away from something that he understands that is going to destroy his life. He just doesn't walk away from it because it is too alluring. It is too attractive to him. He's got to turn his back and he's got to run as fast as he can and not look back. But after that becomes the job of becoming spiritually mature. And then the Jewish people had to now refine every one of those levels, that 49, and rise themselves above 49 levels, preparing themselves for the giving of the Torah, entering the 49 levels of sanctity, of holiness, and of purity. And how do we achieve this? How do we become spiritually mature? How do we walk and navigate through the darkness of this world to reach freedom, to reach spiritual freedom? How do we make the giving of the Torah not only the giving of the Torah, but the receiving of the Torah? How do we become the reciprocal of God's law, of God's spirituality, that we own it, we become custodians of it, it becomes ours, an inseparable part of us? How do we achieve that? By appreciating the gifts that God gave us. By appreciating the power that He has given within us. I spoke on Shabbat in Seudah Shlishit that God says that let us create man in our image and in our likeness. And we went through the opinions. What does it mean in our image and in our likeness? And we said that the philosophers speak about our intellect. No other being has an intellect like we have. You just mentioned now that in the last 10 years, the inventions that man was able to come up with his intellect, it's phenomenal. What man is able to think and achieve in the last 10 years is way beyond what the last 150 or 200 years. What man is able to think with his mind is phenomenal. What man is also able to delve and understand in godliness is also phenomenal. This, some say, is the gift of man, of God, the gift of God to man. This is the likeness and the image, because God has no likeness, has no form, has no image. Others say it's free choice. Nobody has free choice. No animal, not even the angels. The sun doesn't have free choice. No celestial being, no heavenly body has any free choice. Man and God have free choice. Only God and man. So we are created in His image and in His likeness. The fact that He gave us the gift of free choice, that we can earn our keep, so to speak. We can walk through the darkness of the world, the concealment of the world, the pleasures and desires of the world, and be successful to choose the right thing and become a higher being. And then there are others say that we are created in His image and in His form, because just as God revealed Himself in 10 manifestations, so too incorporate within us His 10 manifestations, and that which relates most to man from one to the other is His 7 emotions. And this is what the counting of the Omer is really all about. This is how to develop and recognize the image and the likeness that God has placed within us. This gift, and unlocking this gift and seeing what phenomenal potential and strength and power we really have. And very briefly, you will recall when we discussed the 7 emotions, the 10 emanations, and we discussed this at length on Shabbat, so I don't want to, on Seudah Shlishit, so I don't want to repeat for those who were here. But very briefly, the 10 emanations are translated into the 10 utterances by which God created the world. Their source is the 10 emanations. In other words, the 10 ways by which God takes His energy or His spirituality and enclothes Himself. What's a garment? What's a clothing? Something that I enclothe myself into and I reveal to others. Emotions is also a way by which I reveal myself to others. I enclothe myself in 10 emanations as well. and I reveal myself. I work, my soul works through these 10 emanations. My essence, my soul works through these 10 emanations. The Gemara says, just as the soul fills the body, so too God fills the world. So there is a likeness between man and God. There's a likeness between the way our soul works through the body and the way God works through the world. And that is the 10 emanations. And these 10 emanations are called Sfirot. The Sfirot, these lights, Saphir. In Hebrew, Sfirot means emanations, but it comes from the word, or different, Lispor, Sfirat Omer is to count, counting them, but also comes from the word, shares the word Saphir. Saphir is a sapphire, is a brilliant stone. These are 10 emanations by which godliness shines. So too within us, we have 10 emanations by which our soul shines. And they are, you recall, we've discussed it in our shiurim, 3 intellectual and 7 emotional. Chokhmah, Binah, and Da'at are the 3 intellectual. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And the 7 emotional is Hesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. They are kindness. Gvura is discipline or justice or strength or severity. Tiferet is beauty and harmony. Netzach is victory. Hod is splendor. Yisod is foundation. And Malchut is royalty. What are these 7? How do they translate? And this is the counting of the Omer about these 7. And each of the 7, as we discussed before, in order for there to be harmony between our different emotions, and in order for our emotions to be able to survive all circumstances, they must be incorporated one within the other, like a Rubik's Cube. All the colors are all intertwined. So Hesed contains all the other 7. Hesed, and in its purest form, is Hesed Shebe Hesed. That's the first week of the counting of the Omer, if you notice. And then there's Hesed, then there's Gvura in Hesed, and then there's Tiferet in Hesed, and then there's Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut of Hesed. And then the other way around, Gvura of Gvura. And then there's Hesed Shebe Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchut, Shebe Gvura. So each one of the 7 attributes contains within it, like a Rubik's Cube, the other 7, for there to be a harmony and a balance. And we'll soon see why this is necessary. So therefore 7 times 7 equals 49. And that we perfect ourselves with these 7. Now when we recognize what the power of these 7 are and what we're able to achieve, then we can slowly dislodge ourselves from the impurity of the world, from the materialism of the world, and prepare ourselves for the giving of the Torah, for the greatest light of all, for the giving of the Torah. Thank you. What are these 7? So the first one is, as we said, Hesed, it's love. Kindness, it's love. It's giving of oneself. The next one is Gvura, strength, courage, the ability to overcome temptation, awe and respect, the ability to give respect, the ability to be strong. Then the next one is Tiferet, which is beauty. It's a harmony of those 2 that we just said. It's a balance, mercy, compassion, peace. So these are the talents that God has given us. The next one is Netzach, which means victory, or ambition, or endurance. These are all extremely powerful qualities. And the next one is hod, splendor, which is overcoming challenges, humility and devotion is associated with hod. To be able to humble yourself, to recognize that God is greater than you, to humble yourself before God, to be able to devote yourself to what's right. And then the sixth one is Yisod, the foundation, is bonding and unity. With whatever it is we attach ourselves to, we can very strongly attach ourselves to godliness if we want to the extent that we become inseparable. So that's a quality that we have. We can bond with others, become one with others. It's a very powerful quality that we have. So we have to recognize the quality that God gave us first. If we recognize them, then we can polish them. And the last one is malchut, which is royalty, regality. It's transmission, it's giving, it's dignity, it's communication. These are the qualities that God gave us. And these 7 are to be perfected. I want to concentrate just on 2 of them, which is Netzach and Hod. Netzach and Hod. Now, you recall that we discussed that the attributes are divided into 3 groups. Like the body, there's the center of the body, there's the right of the body, and the left of the body. So too, these attributes, these emanations, are divided into 3 groups. Right, center, and left. Anything on the right is related to kindness, or love, or giving. Anything on the left is connected to withholding, discipline, judgment. Anything in the middle is connected to beauty, compassion, unity. So, for example, Hesed, or let's start with Chokhmah, wisdom, which is a spark of understanding, the first ray of light, or first ray of giving of knowledge, it's on the right. Then there's Hesed, it's also on the right. And then there's Netzach, also on the right. Now, what is Netzach doing there? What do we need Netzach on the right if we already have the attribute of kindness? So what do I need another attribute that is associated with kindness? Similarly on the left, if I have Gvura, which is severity, justice, what was the word I used? Discipline. What do I need a Hod? What do I need Hod? Hod is also related to this attribute of this. What do I need 2 attributes that are associated with discipline? So the Kabbalists teach us Hesed, kindness, is like the right hand. Justice, discipline, severity, or respect is the left hand. But I also need feet. I also need feet that carry it through. Not just the ones that arouse the passion and the love or the hate or the anger towards something that is wrong. I need the feet that carry it through. And the Kabbalists teach us, these 2, that which correspond to the feet, the Netzach and the Hod, are the power to endure, are the power that even if we feel we've come to a conclusion that we want to do the right thing, we want to love God, we want to love Torah, we want to love mitzvot, we want to love other people, we detest evil, it's wrong, and we have respect for the Torah, and we want to be disciplined, etc., etc. But sometimes these feelings, which we felt just a moment ago, sometimes they disappear. But we know what's right. Our legs carry us through. The Netzach and the Hod, these 2 attributes, overcome sometimes a spiritual darkness. Give us the ability to run away or to run to something that we need to run to or something that we have to run away from. So we see that we need all of them. We need all of them because there are times that we come to the right conclusion, but we just don't have the strength to carry it through. And we need to run away from that which is no good. Sometimes we've come to the conclusion that I want to do this, I want to study Torah, I want to pray more, or I want to do this mitzvah or that mitzvah, and it just suddenly we have a moment of darkness. But the Netzach carries us through. It's overcoming challenges. These are the gifts that God gave us. How many times that we came to the right conclusions? How many times that we said, yes, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that. And then all of a sudden, 2 moments later, we forgot about it. We just didn't carry it through. Endurance and splendor overcomes the obstacles. These are the gifts, ladies and gentlemen, that God gave us. And when we ponder about it for a whole week, about how the attribute of love and how we can cause that attribute of love. First of all, we have to arouse that attribute of love. And then we have to be able to have the courage to enact it, the discipline, and the harmony, and the humility to be able to do it even if we don't necessarily understand what we are doing, or the endurance to be able to endure, to keep on doing it and do it again and do it again. And you know, we all feel a spiritual high at times. And sometimes we don't feel a spiritual high. How many times would you feel excited about putting on tefillin, and then the next day we woke up, who knows what, we had a stomach ache all night and we barely slept and we're putting on tefillin barely with any feeling and any emotion. That quality of love, of passion to do a mitzvah has to endure. These are the gifts that God gave us. All we need to do is ponder, polish them, reveal them. This is what the counting of the Omer is all about, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the counting of the Omer is all about. Pondering the gifts that God gave us, understanding them, understanding what they are, what they can achieve, how they propel us to unbelievable spiritual heights, how we can break down barriers between people, how we can be forgiving. We have the ability to forgive. You know how much pressure that releases a person when a person forgave someone, finally truly forgave someone? What a stone it takes off a person. You know what a beautiful feeling that is to forgive someone? You know what a beautiful feeling it is to forgive yourself? To forgive yourself is a very powerful, because we have to forgive ourselves as well for the mistakes that we make. Sometimes we carry this chip on our shoulder that doesn't allow us to grow and develop because we think we are so undeserving of God's revelation. That's humility, that's good. But humility also has to be in the right time and in the right place. So we see how the 7 must be Rubik's cubed, must be intertwined. One has to strengthen the other, as we will discuss. So this is what God has given us. There's a very interesting and powerful verse in Shir HaShirim. But before I go to this verse in Shir HaShirim, which pertains to the going out of Egypt and the receiving of the Torah, which gives us a very, very deep insight into that ray of light that God gave us leaving Egypt and the preparation of the giving of the Torah that is so precise and so specific to the counting of the Omer. It would be very important for me to quote a very interesting Mishnah in Mesechet Sotah, Tractate Sotah, Daf Yud Daled, Amud Aleph, on page 14. The Mishnah says as follows: Kol hamenachot ba'ot menachitin. In temple times, in the tabernacle times, there are different sacrifices that a person brought. These sacrifices, very briefly, because we've discussed it before, are there to elevate the world. The animal world, the vegetable world, water, everything becomes elevated in the temple. When we use it in the service of God, when we use something in the service of God, it becomes elevated. The minerals were elevated, for example. Gold, copper, and silver were used in the temple, dedicated to God. So the mineral world was elevated. That's our objective. Our objective is to make this world a palace for God. To take this example in the tabernacle and in the temple and extend it to our lives, to our homes. When it says, "Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocha," make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in them, plural, even though there was one at a time, does not only mean in the temple or in the tabernacle, it means in our hearts and in our lives. So we have to extend the lesson of the tabernacle, of the temple, of using everything for the service of God, uplifting and elevating everything, rather than the man descending into the mineral, meaning to say that he has a lust for power, for money, for the minerals, for gold and for silver and for copper. And he now is descending to them. He's lowering himself because he's making them and the acquisition of them his master. Rather, we take them and we use it and we uplift it. We uplift it and we are lifted by it as well. For a higher goal. We enter a higher level. This is done in the tabernacle and in the temple, but this has to be done in our own private lives as well. So for example, when the Almighty blesses us with wealth, we share this wealth. We use this wealth for mitzvot. I remember when I was studying in New York, there were two dry cleaners. One here on the right, one on the left. One was cheaper than the other, but one was a religious Jew. And I went up to him and I said, by right, I don't have to go to you because you're more expensive. I can go to the cheaper one. But I know that the money that I spend, a portion of the money that I spend, goes to support your children, goes to the profits that you receive. A portion of it goes to supporting the poor, to supporting Torah institutions, to your Shabbat table. So I'd rather spend a couple of more dollars to be a partner in all of those beautiful things that you do in your life than pay cheaper, but the money that goes to the profits of the one that's cheaper have nothing to do with spirituality or godliness, just his own livelihood and his own life, and as important and as great as it may be, cannot be compared to when something is used for the service of God. And so too, when we don't run our lives by the greed and the lust for wealth, for honor, for power, that's a lesson that we learn from the tabernacle. Use what we have, the blessings that we have, to share with others. As it says in this week's Torah portion, that if there is a person who becomes impoverished and no longer can support himself, it says, V'hayimach, you must support him. V'hayimach, and he shall live with you. What does it mean, he shall live with you? It means to say that his livelihood, God entrusted to you. Why there are more wealthy people and more poor people, that's up to God to decide. Why each person has different trials and different tribulations. The trial of wealth is in fact a greater trial than the trial of poverty, because so easily a person can be wealthy and lose sight of what's important and become arrogant and follow his ego and not share and not care for others and worry all about himself and feel that he's almighty and he's all-powerful. Whereas a poor person always looks to God for his bread. He's much more humble. What a terrible thing it would be to live 70, 80, 120 years in such a manner with arrogance. And then after 120 years, when the soul goes up and lives forever, to be able to carry that burden, that stain with us forever. What a terrible thing. Whereas a poor person who lived to 120 had a difficult time in this world, but when his soul goes up to heaven, after 120 years, his soul is pure, his soul is clean. It doesn't take with it any baggage. He was humble before God. What a beautiful thing. So the Torah says, V'hayimach, Why God gave different challenges to different people, we don't know. But one thing we know for sure, that when a person is blessed with more wealth than another person, the hayimach, a portion of his wealth, a portion of his livelihood was given to you to give to him. That's what it says, v'hayimach, he lives with you. His livelihood is in you, with you. It's in your bank account. It's in your earnings, it's in your profits. It belongs to him. So we learn this from the tabernacle. We learn how to take the best and bring it to God. So we use all of the elements of this world. We have fire, we have water, we have the minerals, we have the animal and the vegetable. One of the sacrifices is called menachot, the meal offering, because it's made out of meal. It's made out of solet. How do you say solet in English? Semolina, the nicest, the best flour. The best flour. They're sifted 12 or 13 times. Sifted, very beautiful, the finest of flours. It's made out of flour. For those who can't afford. Olive oil. And you make nice little pitot or little cakes out of it. And you break it up and you put it on the altar. It's a gift to God. It's our way to show God that we have not taken this world for granted, that we are here to uplift ourselves and uplift the world with it. One of the sacrifices, ladies and gentlemen, is this menachot. And they come from the hitim, they come from wheat. Except, v'zu, says the Mishnah, and this one, the minhat kenaot, the minha, the offering, the meal offering of the jealous husband, and I'm going to give you the history of that in a moment, that comes from the se'orim, from barley, not from wheat. I'll give you a little bit of background. The background is as follows. The law is that God desires that there should be peace and harmony in the home. Now, if a person is jealous, if a person suspects his wife of wrongful behavior, but there is no witnesses to the fact. For example, the wife says, listen, I don't want you to go and associate yourself with this guy. He's too friendly towards you, you're too friendly towards him. It's not on. I don't want you to go shopping there. Don't shop there. Go to Woolworths. Don't go to this shop. And she goes there. And she's there privately with him. But you don't know whether she just went to, buy some flour or some barley. Or God forbid, maybe she did something wrong. There's no witnesses. Just someone saw them. People saw her go to the shop, and he warned her and he told her, don't go to this shop, don't go to this guy's house. The guy in his house sells semolina. He sells garam masala, he sells spices, he sells paprika. He's got the best paprika. He's too friendly. I don't like this behavior. I don't want you to go there. And I don't like this business of selling privately in the house. I don't like it. Probably doesn't pay taxes. And who knows what other mischief he gets up to. I don't want you going there. And she goes. She comes in, he closes the door, and they are there by themselves. Now, it could be she just went to get the garam masala. Maybe not. But because God desires so much that there should be peace in the house, there's a mechanism in the temple times, only because the Jewish people are on a higher level, there's a mechanism how to tell what's going on. And that is that she comes to the Kohen, and he says, listen, she's, I asked her not to go, and she went, which is a wrong thing. But she's not prohibited to her husband unless we know for sure that she committed adultery. But she did a wrong thing. He told her not to go, and she went and she did it. I can't live in peace with her. I don't know whether to trust her or not to trust. I can't live in peace with her. So she goes to the Kohen. I'm just going to make this very brief. She goes to the Kohen, and he writes that little portion of this sotah woman, this wayward woman, and the name of God is there, and he takes with the ink and he puts it into the water and she drinks it. Now, a miracle happens. If indeed she sinned, then she dies. And if not, she survives, and she will have a child. God is prepared that his name, so to speak, be rubbed out. A prohibition, by the way, it's a biblical prohibition to rub out God's name, erase God's name. You're not allowed to do it. One time you're commanded to do it, it's in order to save the harmony between the husband and wife. Such a stark lesson that God wants to tell us, the importance of harmony between husband and wife. Part of this whole procedure is that she brings a minha offering. She brings a meal offering, but she doesn't bring it from wheat. She brings it from barley. There's only 2 times that we bring from barley. That's one of them. Why from barley? So the Mishnah says, Keshem shema'aseh ma'aseh behema, ka'korbana ma'achal behema. Just as her actions were actions that were associated with the animal kingdom, i.e. the animal doesn't make any calculation, has no decency, has no modesty, has no discipline, and she behaved in a way without discipline. Let her offering be one that is food, is fodder for the animals, which is barley. You don't give wheat to the animals. Wheat is food for humans. It's more expensive. You give them barley. In those days, they used to give barley to eat to the animals. That's what the animals ate. Humans eat wheat. So let her sacrifice not be a good one. Her sacrifice, her offering is from the animal fodder. There's one more meal offering that comes from the barley, which is meal fodder, which is animal fodder. What's that? The omer. When we count the omer, before we count the omer, we bring a sacrifice to the altar. And the Kohen comes and he takes it and he waves it in 6 directions. Up, down, north, south, east, and west. And up and down. 6 directions, showing that God's mastery is all over the whole world. That's a holy sacrifice. It's got nothing to do with any sin or anything like that. Why is that barley? This is the only time, these 2. One of them is a wayward woman who ultimately, even though she survived, even though that she may have not sinned, but she did the wrong thing, she brings a barley offering because it's associated with an animal, with her animalistic drives, her animalistic soul. But the omer, the counting of the omer, before we count down the omer, we bring this barley. That next day, that next morning, early in the morning, we bring this, the day after Pesach, we bring this omer offering. And the Kohen waves it. And then we count down the omer, count up the omer. Why? Why is it barley? What did we do wrong? On the contrary, we're preparing ourselves to the giving of the Torah. The answer is because when we prepare ourselves for the giving of the Torah, the whole concept of the Sfirat HaOmer is how to refine our animal side as well. How to refine, how to uplift ourselves from the 7, and by extension, the 49 animalistic drives or emotions that we can enclose our desires and our pleasures and our lusts in, and express ourselves through them as well. For example, a person could love himself. For example, a person could be angry. A person could want to be very victorious and always want to win a challenge and not be humble. Or a person could be just depressed and doesn't care about anything. You can use those same attributes that we spoke about, these beautiful qualities, for good. God forbid you can use it for bad. So the objective of the Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, and we call it Omer because it is associated with bringing of the minha, of the meal offering of barley, because just as barley is meal for the animals, so too the Omer comes to refine that animalistic side to us. And remember that which we ran out of Egypt because we had that animalistic side, because we were addicted to the animalistic drives and lifestyle and culture of Egypt, now we have to perfect it. Now we have to refine it. Now we have to go the other way. And now we have to concentrate on our good attributes, in contradistinction to our bad attributes, in contradistinction to our pleasures and desires, and all of the negative ways by which we can use those same 7, and by extension 7 times 7, 49 negative ways by which we can express ourselves. As I said, we can love and desire ourselves and what gives us pleasure. We can use these very attributes for the negative. We can have the aspect of victory, of netzach, of endurance. That we have to always get the better of things. We're always right. No matter what the other guy says, we don't listen, we don't care. I'm always right. I don't care about your opinion. My opinion that counts. And this is what the Omer is all about. Now next week we're going to speak about the verse in Shir HaShirim. There is a very powerful verse that guides us and teaches us how to uplift ourselves. And we will speak about how to use these attributes in different circumstances, how we need a blend of this different circumstance, of the different attributes in different circumstances, and we will bring some examples. So we'll continue next week, Bezrat Hashem.